Hey everybody, it's Chris, MTGO's Rex Start, and we're back for part 5 of this week's show and tell. And here we are going to highlight the deck by Chamale, which won my Old Fogey Challenge at long last. The Old Fogey Challenge stood, I think, almost as long, or perhaps a week or two longer than the Kamigawa Challenge was. I knew it would be a hard one. Mana fixing was going to be an issue. You had to use only cards from Alpha Beta Unlimited and the first standalone expansions up through Fallen Empires. So what Chamale went with here, very solid bird list. It does require you to play a few kind of iffy ones, but it's a land destruction deck. And he uses Wild Growth and Birds of Paradise as his turn 1 accelerants to go into Ice Storm and Stone Rain on turn 2, and alternatively Kudzu, which is an interesting card to play against. I don't recall playing it. I believe it may have been rare when it was in Revised, and I don't recall ever playing with it back in the day. I would have used other options even when I did play land destruction decks. But it does create sort of an interesting scenario because you can then tap that Kudzu land and it sends it back to your opponent, and then your opponent can send it back at you when he taps his land. And in some testing matches against Chamale, I found it often useful to just consider the land that was Kudzu'd to basically have been destroyed and not risk using it at all to send it over and have it sent back at you, because that never seemed to work out very well. Anyways, sort of his third option for early land destruction spells here. And as a land destruction deck, one of the things that you have to do once you get your opponent stalled out is you have to have some sort of beefy flyer. Dragons have been used over the years as your closer, but since he was in birds, what he went with was Rock of Care Ridges, which is a flying gray ogre with art that wouldn't make the cut these days, but for some reason I always kind of liked. I don't think that bird's really in proportion to anything else, but it's I don't know, it's always had a soft spot for this one, and especially they cut this guy out of Revised for being too powerful. More specifically, they were trying to get rid of cards that were directly better than other cards solely because of rarity. That rarity used to be one of the ways that they sort of indicated their power levels. So this guy was directly better than Grey Ogre, so he got the axe. Sedge Troll was directly better than, or sorry, this guy was better than Hill Giant, and Sedge Troll was better than Grey Ogre, and he got the axe. But anyways, Rocket Carriages serves a flying beater role in this deck. Clockwork Avian, who I think was from Antiquities, has the old Clockwork mechanic on it. He has 4 +1/+0 counters when he comes into play, and basically if you attack or block with him at the end of combat, you lose a counter from him, but during your upkeep you can recharge him with counters as long as you can't go back up any higher than 4. And at 5 mana for a 4 power flyer, not ideal, but turns out that it was pretty much good enough here to get him a couple of wins. And one of these suggestions that I believe Chamale said came from AJ Impey was to run Rook Egg and Earthquake, and Earthquake gave him a great finishing spell, and worked very well with the Rook Egg since it allowed him to produce a beefy flyer here as a result of earthquaking. So, and of course it gave him a little bit of built-in protection against something like Wrath of God or what have you, assuming the opponent ever got to enough mana to cast that. And the mana fixing, he went with 4 copies of City of Brass, and then just Mountains and Forests. Couldn't find the Taigas. Again, I knew that would be one of the challenges of this format, is that you didn't have budget mana fixing available to you really, because there weren't any dual lands available in those initial expansions to the game that other than the Alpha Beta Unlimited duels. So that certainly did make things a little more difficult, but Chamale fought through and was able to get it done with just this. I want to go ahead and introduce you to the next challenge, and then I'm going to show a match between AJ and Chamale here to show the deck in action. But here's the next challenge. It is going to be built around and prominently feature another old card and some cards that go together with him. Telem Tor. This guy is a knight from Mirage. He has flanking. He costs 5 and he's a 2/2. Boy, that seems awful. But when he attacks, all attacking creatures with flanking get +1/+1 until end of turn. You are going to be making heavy use of that if you attempt this challenge, because the challenge will be to play a Knight Tribal deck in which every creature in your deck has to have flanking, and you will need to include a minimum of 3 copies of this guy here. Now, I expect that's going to put you in red and white, but I'm not sure. There may barely be enough red flanking guys to play it as a mono red deck. Anyways, I like some of those old forgotten mechanics, and since we're moving slightly ahead from the dark ages of Magic to just the really, really early days with this guy here. So I will have the full rules for what you can do, and the prizes that you can win for this challenge will be listed in the article. But right now, stay tuned for a replay in which I did some live commentary between Chamale and AJ.